Safety certainly has been in the spotlight lately, with roadway fatalities climbing, with opioid overdoses climbing as well. We certainly all have had so many stresses in our life over the last couple of years, and now's the time for us really to pause and to think about safety and our role in it and where we have leadership there. Safety is real. Safety is and does affect everyone's life, and safety is personal. And as a result of that, pretty much everyone has a safety story. The reason we put this conversation series together is so that we can talk to safety leaders and advocates and hear their story, which is why we're here today. And we're going to be talking to Michelle Garner-Janna. Michelle is the Executive Director for Global Health, Safety, and Environment for the Cummins Engine Company. She also is currently, and we're honored to have her be so, the chair of the steering committee of the Campbell Institute. So today we welcome Michelle for a conversation in Safety is Personal. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our first question for you really is around why it is you get up every morning and take on the challenge of safety and keeping people safe so they can live their fullest lives. What fuels you?
And that's a great question. And I think at the end of the day, it's really about helping people and caring about the people in my life, whether it's at work or in my family. I think it's really important, the work that we do as any HSE professional. At the end of the day, it really is about saving lives, saving limbs, and allowing people to go home safe. So any work that I'm able to do around risk reduction, strengthening culture, anything where I know that someone's going to go home in a safe manner, it brightens my day. And so any of the times when it may be challenging for an HSE leader, which those times, especially over the past couple of years, have been frequent, I just try to keep in mind that we're helping people. Every day we're helping people, and that's really what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you for that. And that's fuel that can really inspire all of us to get up every morning and do the hard things. Safety is about helping people be safe, go home at night to their loved ones. But there are sometimes challenges that are unique for women in their workplaces and specifically in keeping themselves safe. Can you share a little bit of your experience and maybe your advice for women and this issue of safety?
Absolutely. And before I share that, I want to thank you and everything that you've done for DE&I across NSC and Campbell. It's just, it's a pleasure to work with someone who really is passionate about diversity and inclusion, and you've done so much for the council and for the Institute. So
a partner in crime.
Thanks. So when I think about gender and kind of my journey with it, if I think back to 25 plus years ago, I was in a position, first of all, I was the only girl in my household. I had two older brothers. I was the only girl on the debate team coming up in school. I found myself to be the only girl on a tennis team early in high school. And I also went into engineering for college, in which I was one of just a handful. So this idea of being the only, which I think that you've also experienced, was ingrained early in my life. So when I started in manufacturing, both in industrial engineering as well as in safety, again, I was one of the few. And I believe that there was some unconscious bias that may have been at play. I think that it was just uncommon, right? It wasn't as common to see women out on the line, getting their hands dirty, in the trenches, if you will. So I think that I took it upon myself to work harder, to work longer, and to do more to basically get the level of respect to the counterparts that were at the table. And I saw that as a norm. I honestly didn't see it as a disadvantage. I just thought it was something you had to do because it's what I had always done. I'm really so happy to see the progress that's been made. And today there are very few situations where there's the only for women, right? Especially in the EHS field, there are many women who are coming up through the ranks in leadership positions. And I think that with that population growing and becoming more visible, I think the level of respect has grown with it, right? I think that there have been so many opportunities for people to see women in action and to know that, okay, clearly they can do this work just as well, if not better, than anyone else, that they're working with. So I've just been so happy to see that. When I think about some of the challenges in the workplace for women, one of the first that comes to mind is really around PPE. And I think that's just a really good example. Again, our manufacturing populations have really been primarily male for a long period of time, right? And so when you think about the personal protective equipment, whether it's glasses to steel toe to anything, hard hats, aprons, they were typically designed for men, and typically 50th to 95th percentile men, right? So, larger,
not you and me.
Yeah, exactly. And so, in trying to make sure that we're protecting all of our employees equally, it's so important to make sure that we have the capability and the supplies to provide PPE for, not just women in general or 50th percentile, but 5th percentile women, so that we can ensure that everyone has equal access to safety.
Yeah, and it does take intention, because sometimes it's you just think that everything you're providing is going to suit your entire workforce, and you just have to kind of stop, think, pause, and make sure that you're really covering all of your workers.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And I think some of the only, I think women in the past have just gotten used to having to make do with that, right? And so you didn't necessarily want to raise your hand and say, hey, these don't fit, or hey, can we do something better? One other thing that I would mention that's more current, that is really a challenge for women, that has been more pronounced, I think, is the fact that so many women are mothers or are caretakers, so they have this additional level of responsibility, this additional level of stress that they're having to deal with at home. Of course, there are men that do the same in some situations, but again, statistically, it's fallen on the woman. So they're having to show up for work and accomplish the same things, go through the same stresses at work while trying to balance the stress from home as well. And I think during the pandemic in particular, we saw what that meant when children were having to be educated at home, and again, caregiving. We saw attrition for women in the workplace just skyrocket. And so I think it's a really good point that we need to take into consideration in thinking about women bringing their full selves to the role and what they may be bringing in addition to what some of the male counterparts
Yeah,
are.
you talked about being one of the only, but you're bringing a different pair of eyes, a different set of experience, and whether it was back when you were one of the only or now today, thankfully, not so much, you bring in a perspective that has to be put on the table, has to be put into the equation. And I know in working with you that you always find a way to do that in a respectful and productive way, but it's always extremely impactful. So thank you for bringing that.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Michelle, you talked about early in your career being one of the only women in this profession. Today it has changed, and thankfully to leaders like you who've brought others along and mentored and sponsored women and men in this career field. What would you say to someone just starting out in the safety business? What advice, what words of wisdom do you have for them?
I love this question. First, it's really three parts. First off, I would say, hopefully you're passionate about helping people and about caring, because if you have a passion for something, then you'll never work a day of your life if you're working toward that. So I think, just again, caring for people and really being protective and wanting to help in general, you will be at a huge advantage if you have that in place already. The second item I would say is, in my opinion, there are really two aspects to an HSE leader. And so especially if you're starting out, one aspect is around the technical side, the subject matter expertise side, and just being analytical and looking, understanding compliance and what you need to do, and kind of the function as a whole, just being good at that, right? And I think for people coming out of school, for example, that's really where the focus is, and that's where they've been taught to, here are the tools that you have, now go and complete this. It wasn't until a little later in my career that I realized the second part to the equation, and it's really just as, if not more important, to be a strong leader, and the cultural side of HSE. So really being able to influence people who may not be in your span of control, being able to motivate people to really take action and to get on board with your ideas, right? Motivate people to care. That's such a big part of HSE. And I think you really need both of those in order to be a well-rounded EHS professional at the end of the day. And I believe it's that more soft skills side of caring and influencing and motivating that isn't necessarily touched as much upon in school as students are coming out. So I think that that's a really important piece. And I can remember when I was young and just starting out and I would hear culture, et cetera, I literally at the time thought, well, that's not the data. That's
squishy stuff.
Exactly. It's really about risk reduction and, let's lower the injuries. You can't effectively do that if you don't have a strong culture.
Yeah.
So, and then thirdly, I would say, I would recommend just be your best advocate, right? No one's going to look out for you more than you should be doing. So identifying a mentor, identifying a sponsor, being open to opportunities that might not be directly in your career path that you have in mind. Think about opportunities that may be outside of EHS for a period of time that will broaden your experience and will also help you be a better EHS leader when you return. So, and lastly, I would say visibility. So if there are opportunities to volunteer for projects, if there are opportunities to work on a team, again, maybe it's EHS related, maybe it's not. Those are great learning experiences and opportunities. And it also gives you exposure in a lot of cases to a group of people who may not otherwise know who you are, right? Yeah. And you never know what one opportunity, one good project, just having your name out there and having one person hear it, that really can make a difference. And, especially from a sponsor standpoint.
Well, I love that. So you started by saying, know your craft, know the tools, but because safety is personal and safety is about getting in human beings, other individuals, to take action, to have beliefs, to have behaviors that are going to keep themselves and others safe, you have to also know how to influence humans. And that caring word, I know in dealing with you, caring is so much about who you are, but it also is a tool for the EHS professional. So thank you for bringing all that to life. You are an amazing leader, but I think it is that when I worked with you, it's that balance between the craft and the leadership and caring that you put together so beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
We started by saying that safety is personal and everybody has a safety story. Mm-hmm. We love to hear people's safety stories, and a lot of times that starts with someone or something that is personal to you about safety. So if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing your personal safety story.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a gentleman that I worked for about 15 years or so ago. He was a business unit leader in the Cummins organization. I stepped in to fill in on a project for someone. He happened to be at the plant that I worked at and saw me present. And from there, he asked me eventually to move into a business unit, the business unit he led. And I was just so inspired by the way that he led and the way that he cared. I had never seen an executive at that level who truly was emotional about the caring for employees and employee safety. And come to find out, he had been through a horrific event years and years prior as a plant manager, a fatality that really shook his world and impacted him to the point where it changed every aspect of how he did work, right? So he demonstrated that safety was a value for him every day, every minute, every hour. First thing he would do on site tours, he would specifically ask very detailed questions of plant managers about safety, drilling down about accidents or incidents that may have happened, a year ago. He made it clear that was important to him. If he's on a shop tour, I can vividly remember the first shop tour I went on with him. He was filming a video on a Six Sigma project, and he was looking behind the camera, and there was a lockout tagout, process that was going on, and they were not doing it properly. He immediately shut down the camera, said, stop everything, stop the line, like, let's go over here. Trained the people, first asked to understand, why, if there was a lack of training, et cetera. But he was such a good coach and mentor, and just demonstrated the right behavior. He was a huge inspiration to me, especially for someone not in the HSE field, right? So he had a really big impact on my career and me going into that next level of business unit, but also just in how his behavior was then followed by all of the general managers and plant managers that came behind him, because you knew it was important to him. Safety was the value and important to him, so it was therefore important to everyone who worked in his organization.
And has he since retired?
He has.
But his impact has not, so
it
clearly.
Has not. It has not, yes. No, actually, we email frequently. I just heard from him. He's on several boards, and he's often, asking for some specifics for safety for each of the different industries he's on. He's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for telling that story. And we often say that safety needs to be a value, and when you see it lived in life, as you just described of this leader, it's contagious.
It is.
Not only for the folks that work for him, but yourself. And I'm assuming that everyone you touch today has a little piece of him in how you're then bringing his legacy forward.
I hope so. Thank you.
As we started, this is a series about safety being personal. And for a lot of leaders, there's something that happened or an experience that they had that safety became very personal. Mm-hmm. And telling their story can have huge impact. Would you mind telling your safety is personal story here today?
I will try. So bear with me. So I started out working at Cummins as an engineer. It was a family. That plant was a family. We all knew one another. We knew each other's grandkids, kids. It was such a good environment. And one day, October 18th, 1999, we had a member of the family went into work that day to do his job. He was a maintenance employee. Ironically, he was actually working on a safety work order to improve ergonomics at a workstation. Unfortunately, he was electrocuted, and he was not able to be revived.
Wow.
And loss really gives you perspective. And to just understand that someone went to work
and didn't go home.
And they didn't go home to their family. And thinking to yourself, what else could I have done? What else should have been done? Like, how can I change this? It really changes your perspective on everything, literally. So that was a family member to me. And it's really made safety so much more personal, because it's terrible anytime someone gets injured, no matter what the injury, even if it's a minor cut or God forbid, a fatality. But when you know the person personally, it just makes it that much more of a jolt.
Yep.
And a life-altering situation. Obviously not as life-altering as it was for that person and his family and the entire site. But I do think that event impacted so many people at that plant, not just me, but as far as making it personal, it really changed the culture immediately. And those family members really came together and looked out for one another, and really they just took personal responsibility and accountability in knowing that I never want that to happen to anyone else, period. So I think that's the reason it's so personal, and that's the reason it's difficult for me to share. But that had a huge impact. I don't know if I would be in safety, quite frankly, if it wasn't for that event.
Well, again, that horrific event then has positive ripple effects for all of those family members and for what you're giving back. So.
Absolutely. And when we talk about culture and how critical that is in having a good HSE environment as a whole, and at Cummins we have a process, it's called Live It, Lead It, and it's training that we developed, and it was really designed for leadership to get them to go through that jolt that I described, that my supervisor had described, right, without having to really live through it. So we really share personal stories and hearing employee testimonials to help people understand the emotional impact, right? Because you're exactly right. You don't want that loss to be in vain. You want to learn as much and progress as much as you possibly can to make life safer for everyone else, right? So yeah, I think a lot of progress has been made as a result of serious injuries, and it's just unfortunate, you know, that we would ever have to lose a life. But that being said, I think we've saved so many lives and limbs and everything else as a result of strengthening the culture and really, again, people looking out for one another on the shop floor and just making it a better place. So there is a silver lining in making safety better and more of a value after an event such as that.
Exactly. And as you said, loss always hurts, but when you know that the loss is something that could have been preventable, and I know you speak so passionately about preventive activities, making sure that we're looking at what could happen and making sure that action's taken before something bad, life or limb, does occur, is I think what fuels, you know, you personally, at least from what I can see. It's about getting ahead of it.
Absolutely.
Because it's horrific if we don't.
Right.
And we never want to be there, but if we use it as a catalyst, as you just shared with us, to make sure it never happens again, then we know why we come to work every morning.
Exactly. And that's why it's personal.
That's why it's personal.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.